The coffee shop was nearly empty when Rebecca Everett spilled her entire life story to a complete stranger, and she had no idea why the words kept tumbling out. She had been sitting alone at a corner table, staring at her phone with tears threatening to spill over, when the tall man with dark hair and impossibly blue eyes had approached. He had asked if the other chair was taken, and she had shaken her head. That was supposed to be it. A simple interaction. But then he noticed her expression. "Rough day?" he had asked, his voice unexpectedly gentle, and somehow that simple question had unlocked everything. 20 minutes later, she was still talking, telling this man about her mother's cancer diagnosis from that morning, about how she felt like the world was crumbling, about how scared she was of losing the only parent she had left. Her father had died when she was 16, and the thought of facing that kind of loss again made her feel like she was drowning. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," she said finally, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "You're a complete stranger. I'm so sorry." "This is completely inappropriate." Oliver Vaughn looked at the woman across from him and felt something shift in his chest. He had walked into this coffee shop on impulse, deviating from his usual routine of having his assistant bring him espresso at the office. Something had drawn him here today, and now he understood why. This woman, with her auburn hair falling loose from her ponytail and her green eyes bright with unshed tears, was meant to cross his path. He knew it with a certainty that defied logic. "Don't apologize," he said firmly. "Sometimes we need to talk to strangers. There's no history, no judgment, just honesty." Rebecca looked at him properly for the first time. He was devastatingly handsome, probably in his early 30s, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that suggested money. His watch alone probably cost more than her monthly rent. She felt suddenly self-conscious in her wrinkled work clothes, her face probably blotchy from crying. "Thank you for listening," she said quietly. "I should probably get going. I need to be at the hospital in an hour." "Which hospital?" Oliver asked before he could stop himself. Rebecca told him, and he nodded slowly. "I know it well. They have excellent oncologists there. Your mother is in good hands." "I hope so," Rebecca said, gathering her bag. "Thank you again for being kind to a crazy crying woman." "You're not crazy," Oliver said, standing as she did. "You're scared and you needed someone to hear you. That makes you human." She gave him a small, genuine smile before leaving, and Oliver watched her go through the window. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marcus, I need you to find out everything you can about the oncology department at Memorial General. I want to know who the best doctors are and make sure they're available for consults." His assistant did not question him. Marcus had worked for Oliver for 8 years and knew better than to ask why his boss suddenly had an interest in cancer treatment facilities. Oliver Vaughn was not a man who believed in fate or destiny. He was a businessman, the founder and CEO of Vaughn Enterprises, a global investment firm that had made him a billionaire by age 32. He dealt in facts, numbers, and calculated risks. But something about that woman in the coffee shop had reached past all his carefully constructed walls and touched something deep inside him. He wanted to see her again. Needed to, actually. But he could not just show up at the hospital. That would be strange, possibly even frightening for her. So he did what he did best. He made a plan. 3 days later, Rebecca was back at the same coffee shop. She had not planned to return, but something about the place drew her back. Maybe it was the memory of that kind stranger who had listened without trying to fix everything, who had simply let her be sad and scared without telling her it would all be fine. Her mother's prognosis was better than they had initially feared. The cancer was stage 2, treatable, with good survival rates. The doctor they had met with was incredibly knowledgeable and had taken extra time to answer all their questions. Rebecca had felt a weight lift slightly from her shoulders. She was ordering her usual latte when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "The caramel macchiato is better." She turned and found herself looking into those same blue eyes. Her mysterious stranger stood behind her in line, looking somehow even better than she remembered in dark jeans and a navy sweater. "You," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "Me," Oliver confirmed, a small smile playing at his lips. "How is your mother?" Rebecca felt warmth spread through her chest at the question. He had remembered. "Better than we thought. Stage 2. Treatable. We met with an amazing doctor who really took time with us." "I'm glad," Oliver said, and he meant it with his entire being. They ended up sitting together again, this time without the heavy weight of grief between them. Oliver learned that Rebecca was 27, that she worked as a gallery coordinator at a contemporary art museum downtown, that she had a degree in art history and a passion for abstract expressionism. She was smart, funny, and when she talked about the artists she worked with, her entire face lit up. Rebecca learned that his name was Oliver, that he worked in investment, and that he had an older sister who lived in London. He was careful not to reveal too much about his wealth or position. He wanted her to know him as just Oliver, not as Oliver Vaughan, billionaire CEO whose face had been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. "You come here often?" Rebecca asked, then immediately winced. That sounded like a terrible pickup line. Oliver laughed, a real genuine sound that surprised even him. He rarely laughed at work. "Not usually, no, but I think I might start." They exchanged numbers before parting ways, and Oliver found himself staring at his phone like a teenager all afternoon. He was supposed to be reviewing acquisition proposals, but all he could think about was the way Rebecca had smiled when talking about a Jackson Pollock exhibition she was helping organize. "You're distracted," Marcus observed during their late afternoon meeting. "I'm fine," Oliver said, but even he knew it was a lie. Over the next 2 weeks, Oliver and Rebecca fell into an easy pattern. Coffee dates turned into lunch dates, which turned into dinner dates. Oliver was careful to choose places that were nice but not ostentatious. He wanted to court her properly, to let whatever was building between them grow naturally. Rebecca found herself thinking about Oliver constantly. He was different from anyone she had ever dated. He was confident without being arrogant, successful without being showy. He asked her opinion on things and actually listened to her answers. He remembered small details she mentioned in passing. When she told him she had a difficult day at work dealing with a demanding artist, he showed up at her apartment with Thai food and a bottle of wine. "You didn't have to do this," she said, but she was smiling. "I wanted to," Oliver replied simply. They ate on her couch, and Oliver looked around her small apartment with genuine interest. It was filled with art prints, books stacked on every surface, a collection of vintage cameras on floating shelves. It was cozy and creative and completely her. "I like your place," he said. "It's tiny," Rebecca laughed, "but it's mine. I've been saving to maybe buy something eventually, but real estate in this city is insane." Oliver nodded, making a mental note. "What would your dream place look like?" Rebecca thought about it. "Lots of natural light, big windows, space for a real studio where I could paint. I don't do it professionally, but it's my therapy. And a kitchen where I could actually cook properly, not this glorified hallway I have now." "You paint?" Oliver asked, leaning forward with interest. "Not well," Rebecca admitted, "but I love it, the process of creating something from nothing. It's magical." Oliver reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'd like to see your work sometime." Rebecca's breath caught. The way he was looking at her made her feel like she was the only person in the world. Maybe, she said softly. Maybe, he agreed, and then he was kissing her. It was perfect, slow and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Rebecca was breathless. I should tell you something, Oliver said, his forehead resting against hers. I haven't been completely honest about what I do for work. Rebecca pulled back slightly, concern flickering across her face. What do you mean? I don't just work in investment. I own an investment firm, a large one. Vaughn Enterprises. I'm Oliver Vaughn. Rebecca stared at him. She had heard of Vaughn Enterprises, everyone had. It was one of the biggest firms in the country. You're a billionaire, she said slowly. Yes, Oliver confirmed. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to know me first, just me. Not my bank account or my company. I should have been upfront sooner, and I'm sorry. Rebecca stood up, needing space to process. That's a pretty big thing to leave out. I know, Oliver said, standing as well but not approaching her. Every woman I've dated has either wanted me for my money or been intimidated by it. I wanted something real. And what we have feels real, Rebecca. She looked at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, and felt her anger deflate. It does feel real, she admitted. But you have to be honest with me about everything if this is going to work. I will be, Oliver promised. No more secrets, I swear. Rebecca nodded slowly. Okay, then I need to tell you something too. I'm terrified of this, of us. I don't do well with relationships. I tend to sabotage them before they get too serious because I'm scared of losing people. After my dad died, I built walls, big ones. I know about walls, Oliver said softly. I've lived behind them my whole life, but with you I don't want them anymore. Rebecca crossed back to him and took his hands. This is scary. Terrifying, Oliver agreed, but worth it, absolutely worth it. They kissed again, and this time there was no hesitation, only certainty. The next few weeks were a blur of happiness. Oliver took Rebecca to gallery openings and quiet restaurants where they could talk for hours. She introduced him to her small circle of friends, who were initially intimidated by his wealth but quickly warmed to him when they saw how he looked at Rebecca, like she was the most precious thing in the world. Rebecca met Oliver's sister, Caroline, when she flew in from London for a business meeting. Caroline was sharp and funny and immediately pulled Rebecca aside. He's never been like this with anyone, Caroline told her over brunch while Oliver was taking a phone call. I've never seen him so happy. So present. Usually he's all business all the time. You're good for him. He's good for me too, Rebecca admitted. Sometimes I can't believe this is real. It's real, Caroline assured her. And for what it's worth, I think you're perfect for my brother. Rebecca's mother was doing well with her treatment. The chemotherapy was rough, but she was strong and determined. Oliver had offered to pay for experimental treatments or private care, but Rebecca had gently refused. She has good insurance and great doctors, Rebecca explained. I appreciate the offer, but I need to do this myself. Can you understand that? I can, Oliver said, though every instinct screamed at him to help, to fix, to use his resources to make everything better. But he was learning that love sometimes meant stepping back and letting the person you cared about handle things their own way. He did, however, make sure that Rebecca had a car service available whenever she needed to get to the hospital, and he accompanied her to appointments when she wanted company. He sat in waiting rooms and held her hand through difficult conversations with doctors. He was there, steady and supportive without trying to take over. 4 months into their relationship, Oliver took Rebecca to the Vaughn Enterprises headquarters for the first time. She had been curious about where he worked, and he was ready to show her that part of his life. The building was impressive, all glass and steel and modern architecture. Oliver's office was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. Wow, Rebecca said, walking to the window. This view is incredible. Oliver came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. I barely notice it anymore. I'm usually too buried in work. You work too much, Rebecca said, leaning back against him. I know. I'm trying to get better at that. You make me want to have a life outside this building. Rebecca turned in his arms. Good. Because I have a life I want to share with you. They had dinner in his office that night, Chinese takeout eaten straight from the containers while sitting on the floor and talking about everything and nothing. Marcus found them like that hours later and had to hide his smile. He had never seen his boss so relaxed, so genuinely content, but not everything was smooth. 6 months in, they had their first real fight. Oliver had been invited to a charity gala and had assumed Rebecca would attend with him. He had even bought her a dress without asking, having it delivered to her apartment. Rebecca called him, her voice tight with anger. You can't just buy me things without asking, Oliver, and you definitely can't assume I'm available whenever you need a date. I wasn't assuming, Oliver said, confused. I thought you'd want to go. It's for cancer research. I thought it would mean something to you. That's not the point, Rebecca said. The point is you made decisions without consulting me. Like I'm some kind of accessory you can dress up and bring along. Oliver felt his own frustration rising. That's not what I was doing. I was trying to do something nice. By buying me a dress that probably costs more than I make in 3 months. By telling me where I'm going to be on Saturday instead of asking. Oliver, I'm not some woman you can just manage like a business deal. The words hit him like a physical blow. Is that really what you think I'm doing? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like you try to fix everything with money. Like you think your wealth can solve all problems, but some things can't be fixed that way. I'm not trying to fix you, Rebecca. I'm trying to show you I care. Then show me by respecting my independence, by asking instead of assuming. By treating me like an equal partner instead of someone who needs to be taken care of. Oliver sat down heavily in his office chair. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm used to making decisions and having people follow them, but you're not an employee and this isn't a business relationship. I should have asked. Rebecca's voice softened. I appreciate the thought behind it, really. But I need you to see me as capable. I have my own career, my own life. I don't need to be rescued. I know that, Oliver said. I do. Sometimes I just get carried away wanting to give you things. I don't need things, Oliver. I need partnership, equality, respect. You have all of that, he promised. And I'll do better, starting now. Rebecca, would you please come to the charity gala with me on Saturday? No pressure if you can't or don't want to, but I'd really love to have you there. She laughed softly. Yes, I'll come, but I'm wearing my own dress. Deal. Even though you'd look incredible in anything. Charmer. Only for you. The gala was a turning point for them. Rebecca wore a simple but elegant navy dress that she had owned for years, and she looked stunning. Oliver introduced her to business associates and philanthropists, and she held her own in conversations about art, culture, and social causes. He watched her with pride, realizing that he had never brought a woman to an event like this before. He had always gone alone, keeping his personal and professional lives strictly separate, but Rebecca fit perfectly into his world while still remaining completely herself. She was not intimidated by wealth or power. She spoke her mind, asked intelligent questions, and made people laugh. Several of his colleagues commented on how different he seemed, how much happier. You're right, Oliver told her on the drive home. I needed this, needed you in this part of my life. I've kept everything so compartmentalized for so long, but I don't want to do that anymore. Rebecca reached over and took his hand. I'm glad, because I want all of you, Oliver, not just the parts you think are presentable. That night, for the first time, Oliver told her about his childhood, about growing up with parents who saw him as an heir rather than a son, about the pressure to succeed, to build empires, to never show weakness, about how he had learned to hide his emotions behind business deals and corporate strategies. "I think I forgot how to feel for a while," he admitted. "Everything was about the bottom line, about winning, until I met you. You remind me that there's more to life than board meetings and profit margins." Rebecca held him close. "You remind me that it's okay to let people in, that not everyone leaves." They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in his life, Oliver woke up in the middle of the night not thinking about work, but about the woman in his arms, and how he never wanted to let her go. As their 1-year anniversary approached, Oliver knew he wanted to marry Rebecca. It was not a question or a maybe. It was a certainty that had settled into his bones. She was his person, his home, his future. But he wanted to do it right. He enlisted Caroline's help in planning the perfect proposal. Rebecca had mentioned once that her favorite place in the city was the botanical gardens, specifically the greenhouse with the tropical plants. She had said it felt like stepping into another world, a peaceful escape from urban chaos. Oliver arranged for a private evening in the greenhouse, pulling strings and making donations to secure the space. He worked with florists to create something beautiful but not overwhelming. He wanted it to be romantic, personal, meaningful. The night before the proposal, he barely slept. He kept checking the ring box, a vintage emerald-cut diamond that had belonged to his grandmother, the only family member who had truly understood him as a child. She had passed away years ago, but he knew she would have loved Rebecca. Rebecca had no idea what was coming. Oliver had simply told her he had a surprise for their anniversary and to dress comfortably. She showed up at his apartment in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, looking so beautiful it made his chest ache. "Ready?" he asked. "Always," she said, kissing him softly. The car drove them to the botanical gardens just as the sun was setting. Rebecca looked confused when they pulled up. "It's closed," she said. "Not for us," Oliver said with a small smile. He led her inside, through the darkened pathways until they reached the greenhouse. When he opened the door, Rebecca gasped. Thousands of tiny lights had been strung through the trees and plants, creating a canopy of stars. Candles flickered on safe surfaces, and soft music played from hidden speakers. In the center of the space was a small table with champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries, her favorite. "Oliver," she breathed. "This is magical." "You're magical," he said, taking both her hands in his. "Rebecca, 1 year ago, I walked into a coffee shop on impulse and met a woman who changed my entire life. You opened up doors in my heart I didn't even know were closed. You make me laugh, you challenge me, you see me as more than just a businessman or a bank account. You see me." Tears were already forming in Rebecca's eyes. She knew what was happening, but she let him continue. "I know I'm not always easy. I work too much. I try to solve everything with money. I forget that partnership means asking and not just doing. But I promise to keep working on that. I promise to be better every day because that's what you deserve. You deserve someone who shows up, who listens, who loves you exactly as you are." Oliver got down on one knee, pulling out the ring box. "Rebecca Marie Everett, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said immediately, pulling him up to kiss him. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. They stood in the greenhouse, surrounded by beauty and light, holding each other close. "I love you," Oliver whispered into her hair. "I love you too," Rebecca said. "So much." They drank champagne and danced slowly to the music, alone in their own private paradise. Oliver told her about the ring, about his grandmother who had worn it with pride. Rebecca cried happy tears and said she would honor its history. The wedding was planned for 6 months later, a small, intimate ceremony with only close friends and family. Rebecca's mother was in remission and thriving, healthy enough to help with all the planning. She adored Oliver, often telling Rebecca how lucky she was to have found such a good man. "Your father would have loved him," she said one day while they were looking at venues. "I think so too," Rebecca agreed. They chose to get married at a historic estate outside the city, a place with beautiful gardens and classic architecture. Rebecca designed much of the decor herself, creating something elegant but personal. She painted a piece specifically for the ceremony, an abstract representation of two souls finding each other in chaos, which they hung at the altar. Oliver's contribution was ensuring every detail was handled perfectly, but he did it by asking Rebecca what she wanted, and then making it happen rather than making decisions for her. He was learning, growing, becoming an even better partner. The night before the wedding, they stayed in separate rooms according to tradition. Oliver found himself restless, unable to sleep. He stood on the balcony of his room, looking out at the gardens where they would marry tomorrow. Can't sleep either. He turned to find Rebecca stepping out onto the balcony next to his. Their rooms were adjacent, both overlooking the same view. "We're not supposed to see each other," Oliver said with a smile. "I won't look at you if you won't look at me," Rebecca teased. They stood side by side, staring out at the moonlit landscape. "Are you nervous?" Rebecca asked. "No," Oliver said honestly. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You, not even a little bit. I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to marry you, even before I knew you existed." "That's how I feel too. Like everything before was just leading me to that coffee shop to you." They stood in comfortable silence for a while longer before Rebecca spoke again. "I'm glad you asked if the chair was taken that day. I'm glad you said yes, to the chair and to everything else." "Good night, Oliver." "Good night, Rebecca. I'll see you at the altar." The wedding was perfect. Rebecca walked down the aisle to her favorite classical piece, holding her mother's arm. Oliver stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, and when he saw Rebecca in her simple but stunning wedding gown, tears filled his eyes. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Oliver promised to always ask rather than assume, to see her as his equal partner in all things, to support her dreams as fiercely as his own. Rebecca promised to let him in even when it scared her, to believe in their love even when things got hard, to build a life with him filled with art and laughter and possibility. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, they kissed as fireworks seemed to explode in their chests. The reception was filled with joy, dancing, speeches that made everyone laugh and cry. Caroline gave a toast about never seeing her brother so happy. Rebecca's mother talked about answered prayers and second chances at happiness. For their first dance, they moved slowly around the floor, oblivious to everyone watching. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Vaughn?" Oliver whispered. "Like coming home," Rebecca said simply. They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks exploring art galleries, eating incredible food, and falling even more deeply in love. Oliver had arranged for them to have private viewings at several museums, and Rebecca was in heaven. He watched her stand in front of masterpieces with wonder in her eyes, and knew he would spend the rest of his life trying to give her that feeling. When they returned home, they moved into a new house that Oliver had purchased as a wedding gift. But this time, he had asked Rebecca's input on every decision. It was a beautiful craftsman-style home with huge windows that let in natural light, a gourmet kitchen, and a converted attic space that served as a perfect art studio. "It's perfect," Rebecca said, walking through the empty rooms. "But Oliver, this is too much." "It's ours," he corrected. "Both our names on the deed. Equal partnership, remember, and you need space to paint, Plus, there's room for a family eventually if that's something you want. Rebecca turned to him with tears in her eyes. You want kids? With you? Absolutely. Not right away, but someday. I want everything with you, Rebecca. They spent the first few months of marriage settling into married life, learning each other's rhythms, figuring out how to balance two careers and a relationship. It was not always easy. Oliver still sometimes fell into old patterns of working too much, and Rebecca sometimes retreated into herself when things felt overwhelming. But they talked about it. They went to couples counseling proactively, not because things were broken, but because they wanted to build the strongest foundation possible. Rebecca continued to thrive at the museum. She was promoted to senior curator, overseeing major exhibitions and making a name for herself in the art world. Oliver was immensely proud of her, attending every opening and bragging about his brilliant wife to anyone who would listen. Oliver, for his part, started delegating more at work. He hired a COO to handle day-to-day operations so he could focus on strategy and spend more time at home. He discovered he actually enjoyed having hobbies, taking up photography so he could capture the moments he wanted to remember forever. 2 years into their marriage, Rebecca found out she was pregnant. They had been trying for about 6 months, and when she saw the positive test, she immediately burst into tears. Her mother was healthy, stable, and thriving. Rebecca felt like everything in her life had aligned perfectly. She told Oliver that night over dinner. She had made his favorite meal and put the pregnancy test in a small gift box at his place setting. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it and see." He opened the box and stared at the test for a long moment before looking up at her with wonder in his eyes. "Really?" "Really," she confirmed, laughing and crying at the same time. Oliver came around the table and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she repeated. The pregnancy was smooth. Rebecca glowed with happiness, and Oliver was attentive without being overbearing. He asked what she needed, listened to her concerns, went to every appointment. When they found out they were having a girl, Oliver cried openly in the doctor's office. "I'm going to have a daughter," he said in wonder. "A little girl." "You're going to be such a good father," Rebecca told him. "I want to be," Oliver said seriously. "I want to be present, involved, loving, everything my father was not." "You will be," Rebecca assured him. "You already are." They named her Grace Evelyn Vaughn, after Oliver's grandmother and Rebecca's father, whose middle name had been Evelyn. She was born on a clear spring morning, tiny and perfect with a dusting of dark hair and her mother's green eyes. Oliver held his daughter for the first time and felt his entire world shift. Every business deal, every $1 million, every achievement in his life paled in comparison to this moment. This tiny human, this perfect combination of him and Rebecca, was the most important thing he would ever create. "Hello, Grace," he whispered. "I'm your dad. I promise to love you and protect you and support you in being whoever you want to be. I promise to be there for dance recitals and science fairs and heartbreaks and triumphs. I promise to be the father you deserve." Rebecca watched her husband with their daughter and felt her heart might burst. This was everything she had been afraid to want, everything she thought she might lose if she let herself love too deeply. But here it was, real and solid and hers. Grace was a year old when Oliver made a major decision. He sold Vaughn Enterprises, not the entire company but his controlling stake. He kept a position on the board and maintained enough shares to ensure financial security for his family for generations, but he stepped back from the daily operations. "I've been building that company since I was 23, he told Rebecca. "I've proven everything I needed to prove. Now I want to focus on what actually matters. You, Grace, maybe more kids if you want them, I want to be present for our life, not absent because I'm chasing deals." "Are you sure?" Rebecca asked. "I know how much that company means to you." "It meant everything before I had you," Oliver said. "Now it's just a company. You're my life." With more time and financial freedom, Oliver started a foundation focused on cancer research and treatment accessibility. Rebecca helped him develop the vision, and it became a joint project they were both passionate about. They named it the Evelyn Grace Foundation, honoring both their daughter and the people they had lost. When Grace was 3, Rebecca gave birth to twin boys, Owen and Noah. The delivery was complicated, and there were some scary moments, but both babies came out healthy and screaming. Oliver, who had remained calm and supportive through Grace's birth, nearly fainted with the twins. "Two," he kept saying. "There are 2 of them." "You're doing math now," Rebecca teased weakly from the hospital bed. "We have 3 children," Oliver said in wonder. 3 humans were responsible for keeping alive. "We've got this," Rebecca assured him. "We're a team, remember," and they were. Parenting 3 young children was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely wonderful. Their house was always full of laughter, toys, finger paintings, and noise. Rebecca continued to work part-time at the museum, and Oliver managed the foundation while being the most hands-on father anyone knew. He changed diapers, woke up for midnight feedings, read bedtime stories, and played endless games of pretend. He coached Grace's soccer team despite knowing nothing about soccer, and learned to braid hair through YouTube tutorials. He was fully, completely present in a way his own father never had been. Rebecca painted more than ever, finding inspiration in motherhood and marriage. She had a small show at a local gallery featuring pieces about love, family, and transformation. Oliver bought every single painting, not because he felt obligated, but because he genuinely loved them. They hung throughout their house, a testament to Rebecca's talent and growth. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they returned to the Botanical Gardens greenhouse where Oliver had proposed. They had arranged for Rebecca's mother to watch the kids, and they spent the evening alone together, dancing to the same music that had played on their wedding night. 10 years, Rebecca said, resting her head on Oliver's chest. "Feels like forever and no time at all." "Best 10 years of my life," Oliver said, "though I think the next 10 will be even better." "How do you figure?" "Because we keep getting better at this, at loving each other, at building this life." Rebecca pulled back to look at her husband. He had some gray at his temples now, laugh lines around his eyes. He was even more handsome than the day they had met, softened by fatherhood and love. "You ever think about that day in the coffee shop?" she asked. "How random it was." "I don't think it was random at all," Oliver said. "I think the universe knew we needed each other. I think we were always meant to meet that day." "I'm glad I told you everything," Rebecca said, "even though it was completely inappropriate to unload on a stranger." "It was fate," Oliver said firmly. "You were meant to tell me. I was meant to listen. We were meant to fall in love and build this life and have these kids and be standing here right now." "You really believe in fate now?" Rebecca teased. "The logical businessman who only believed in facts and figures." "You turned me into a romantic," Oliver admitted. "Everything I thought I knew about myself changed the day I met you, and I would not change a single thing." They kissed under the fairy lights, older now but still so in love it hurt. They had built something real and lasting, something neither of them had thought possible before they found each other. As they drove home to their children and their messy, beautiful life, Rebecca reached over and took Oliver's hand. He squeezed back, a gesture so familiar now it was automatic. They did not need words anymore to communicate the depths of their love. Their house was warm and bright when they arrived. Rebecca's mother had put the kids to bed and left a note saying they had been perfect angels, which was almost certainly a lie but a kind one. They checked on all three children, watching them sleep with the fierce protectiveness that only parents understand. Grace, at 11, was already showing signs of Rebecca's artistic talent and Oliver's sharp mind. The twins, at 8, were tornadoes of energy and mischief. All three were loved beyond measure, growing up in a home filled with affection, security, and possibility. Later, lying in bed with Rebecca curled against his side, Oliver thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter in a coffee shop to a marriage that had exceeded every dream he did not know he had. From a man who lived behind walls to a husband and father who led with his heart. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Rebecca mumbled, half asleep. "For telling me your story that day, for letting me be part of your life, for everything." Rebecca smiled and kissed his shoulder. "Thank you for listening, for staying, for loving me exactly as I am." "Always," Oliver promised, "for the rest of our lives." And he meant it with everything he had. This was his legacy, not the company's or the money or the success. This woman, these children, this love that had transformed him completely. This was everything that mattered, everything that would last. They fell asleep tangled together, the way they always did, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would endure whatever came next. It had started with a simple question and a moment of vulnerability, and it had grown into something extraordinary. Some people never find their person, their soulmate, their home. But Oliver and Rebecca had found it in each other, in a coffee shop on an ordinary day that turned out to be the most important day of their lives. And they never took it for granted, not for a single moment. Their love story was not perfect. They argued and struggled and faced challenges like any couple, but they faced everything together with honesty and commitment and unwavering devotion. They grew together instead of apart, became better versions of themselves because they had each other. And years later, when Grace asked how they had met, Oliver and Rebecca would tell her about the coffee shop, about the tears and the confession and the certainty that some meetings are written in the stars. They would tell her that love finds you when you are brave enough to be vulnerable, open enough to let someone in. They would tell her that sometimes the most important words you can say to a stranger are, "I don't know why I'm telling you this," because those words might just lead you to the person you are meant to spend forever with, the person who will love you through everything, the person who will turn your life into the adventure you never knew you needed. And they would tell her that they lived happily ever after, not because everything was perfect, but because they chose each other every single day. That was the real magic, the real romance. Not the grand gestures or the fairy tale moments, but the daily decision to love and be loved in return. That was their story. That was their forever. And it all began with a conversation in a coffee shop and a billionaire who knew from the very first moment that they were meant to meet.